6:06. What do you think? Should we? I
Let's
can start. I can
start.
Yeah, let's start the intros.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who signed up and has gotten here relatively on time. Thank you all. I'm Trisha Brancalini Foley, the executive director of the Handmade Arcade. As you know, we're pivoting to a virtual marketplace this year from our in-person. Normally we have a one-day event around in December. 10,000 people will come to, so obviously that can't happen this year. So we thoughtfully and panikedly, is that a word, put together a pivot plan in April and March, and where we started working with the Creative Business Accelerator to put together a maker curriculum to help makers pivot their in-person sales model to an online sales model. So tonight is the fourth one I think we're doing. So I'm gonna let Katie of the Creative Business Accelerator introduce all of our panelists, but before that, any maker who is on tonight who is part of the virtual marketplace, I just wanna remind you that I sent out a kind of important email today about signing up if you wanna do any live events during the market for your own business marketing. That email with a sign up spreadsheet went out today. And also information about submitting your videos for the marketplace went out today. So check your email, check the Facebook page. There should be links there. And I am going to sit back, relax, and learn. So thank you all for coming. Katie, on to you.
Thank you, Trisha. There might be some questions lobbed at you too. So, you know, we'll see. It's so nice to be joined by this incredible panel. I am so excited about the just sheer amount of expertise and knowledge and experience that we have represented here. We've created really 3 general buckets, although everybody here definitely understands the different parts too and can speak to those. But we'll be talking a little bit about e-commerce, about the legal aspects of e-commerce, and also maybe we might touch on the idea of sort of the basic legal checklist for a business too, and then photography for makers and creatives. With this idea of, this dovetails very well with the virtual Handmade Arcade and preparing for that opportunity, but it's also, I think, a part of a larger conversation where these are elements of any business that you should be considering, and especially during COVID, pivoting to a more digital platform, which for some makers has been a pretty hard pivot. There was a lot of in-person vending and a lot of in-person relationships. So these might not be skills or considerations that have really been top of mind until now. So we're really trying to provide a bunch of resources for people to endure during this pandemic and the situation that we're in. So I'll introduce myself a little bit. My name is Katie Johnson. I work at the Creative Business Accelerator. My job title is Business Support and Impact Specialist. It's kind of this title that we cobble together out of all of the different things that I do. Just a tiny bit about me. So I work at the CBA, which is a part of Bridgeway Capital. I came into this position actually as the director of Braddock Tiles, which is a nonprofit business that produce small batch architectural tiles with youth, to teach job readiness skills. And before I was doing that, I have had a bunch of different jobs in the arts and nonprofit sector, including running my own ceramics business. I was the curator of public art at Robert Morris University, and I've done just sort of a bunch of different things like many of the panelists that are here. And so that's really enough about me. If you're involved in the CBA as a maker in any way, you know me or you have gotten many emails from me. If you don't know about the CBA, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to tell you more and invite you to an orientation and sort of clue you in on all of the great things that we do. So I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our panelists. First off, I will introduce Porter Loves, which is Sam and Nathan. Nathan Shaulis fell in love with photography. Hi guys. The first moment, his father laid a manual film camera in his hands when he was 12. Since then, he has dedicated himself to improving his skill and craft through formal and informal means. He's a member of Professional Photographers of America and the American Society of Media Photographers. His work has been published in Pittsburgh Magazine, The New Yorker, the Pittsburgh City Paper, the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian American Art Museum Exhibition Catalog, and many other publications. His partner in life and business, the business being Porter Loves, is Sam Laffey, who has been drawing, painting, making, building, and helping for as long as she can remember. She graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with a BFA in Fine Art and a BA in Psychology in 2006, and then later earned her Master's of Arts Management from the Heinz School in 2007. Sam worked as the design and new media manager at the Pittsburgh Glass Center for 10 years before taking the full body plunge, as she puts it, into self-employment with Nathan. I really love that way of describing it. It's really accurate. She is currently serving as the vice president of the board of directors at the Brew House Association. While Sam and Nathan wear many hats, pursuing lots of different work both together and individually, they primarily identify as artists supporting local artists, which I think is a very apt description for sure. I would also say Jack and Jane of all trades, for sure. They know a lot. So I will move over to Marlene. Marlene Van Nelson is the founder and principal attorney at Trellis Legal, LLC, which is located in Pittsburgh. Her transactional law practice serves many small businesses and nonprofits. Marlene specializes in helping businesses start and grow through cost-effective legal services, including entity formation, contract drafting and review, commercial lease review and negotiation, website terms and conditions, which is something that we'll be talking a little bit about today, client agreements, IP and contracts, and more. She specializes in food, agriculture, and creative businesses. Marlene understands and helps facilitate business transactions that involve and support and build invaluable relationships. Marlene is also a board member of the Lawrenceville United and an active member of the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. And I'd also really like to highlight that Trellis Legal just launched a new contract template, which we'll also talk a little bit about. And this is a great tool for small businesses. We at the CBA have leaned on this and have pointed a lot of businesses to this resource because it makes something that feels very scary, very accessible for small businesses, including thinking about website terms, thinking about just general purchase order contracts, sort of those nuts and bolts parts of businesses that many people sort of skim over, but are actually really important when things go sideways. And don't they always go sideways?
Not always, but they can.
yeah, they do. They find a way. So yeah, we love Marlene, and the CBA works with Marlene a lot because we love Trellis Legal. We really do. Okay, and so I'm also going to I'm very excited to introduce Alicia Don Young. We have worked with Alicia in a number of different capacities, and in this capacity is really around e-commerce. She is also a yoga instructor, an entrepreneur, and founder of Yoga Motif, a yoga and wellness studio located here in Pittsburgh. She believes that creating art and creating life are connected and invests her time in people, projects, and communities that explore these practices. In 2018, she founded Yoga Motif to offer creativity as a wellness practice through her signature yoga painting workshop. It's called the Yoga Paint Party. And she also is creating a patent pending yoga paint party mat, which is very exciting. And I think that those are some examples of the yoga paint party maybe hanging behind her. Yep. She makes space to center Black women in healing and is honored to support her birthing community with joyful and gentle prenatal yoga classes. She's also a recipient of numerous awards and accolades in her life and reflects a commitment to the arts, Black women, and wellness. She also holds a Master of Arts Management degree from the Carnegie Mellon University, a BA in Fine Arts, and is a certified yoga teacher. Among other things, I just want to point out, also graduated from Alfred, which is one of the most premier ceramics programs in the country. And with my background in ceramics, I just can't believe the million things that Alicia knows how to do and has done so well. It's just really amazing. Yeah, and so among her endless skills, she also has worked as a business consultant, and she has generously shared with us her insights into e-commerce in 2 different videos. And these are really technical assistance videos that she produced for the Creative Business Accelerator. And we're just so happy to know her and work with her. So
thank you.
You are welcome. Yeah, I think you can tell my enthusiasm at having all of you here and having these just awesome experts share your knowledge with us. And so I thought that since we have these digital resources, that all of the people who are participating and watching this webinar, I would really encourage you to go to either the CBA's website, which is on bridgeway.org, or to the Handmade Arcade's website, to check out all of the digital resources that Trisha and I have put together as a part of the Maker curriculum, because everybody here, all these panelists have contributed to that in some way, whether it's a video, a PDF, sort of other resources. And also to say that we are welcoming questions from everybody. There's a Q&A function for this webinar, so please feel free to ask questions as we move through this. In order to kind of get some ideas flowing, I had asked our panelists to give short presentations to give some like high level concepts and points from the digital resources that are out there, and maybe hopefully generate some questions from all the people who are watching this. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and start with Alicia.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to connect with you today. As Katie shared, one of the things, I have like so many hats and they're all fancy. One of my fancy hats that I'm wearing today is creative consultant for you creatives out there. And one of the things that I did for the Creative Business Accelerator was to create a little synopsis of how to engage your e-commerce website and bring it to the next level. So I'm just going to go over a few highlights from that presentation and just some things to keep in mind as we're living in this new world and spending a lot of time online. So I'm going to go and share my screen right now. Cool. Everyone can see this all right? Yes. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about being just beyond a simple web presence, but utilizing your e-commerce site as a fully functioning store, and just some highlights for that. And so some things to keep in mind. When we think about like all the possible potential things that we can do, there is a lot out there. People spend their entire lives just offering themselves like web development and engaging their online store. So I would encourage you, as you either listen to the video later or listening to this information or any information today, notice, this is like my yoga hatch, notice what is interesting to you, notice what feels like, ooh, makes you curious, and notice where you're like, ooh, yuck, I don't want that. And lean into the spaces and the things that you hear today that are exciting and fun, because that is what's calling your name, and that's probably what you need. And we don't want to spend our time on things that are really, really, really difficult. We don't want to hire out for that if we can. And so we're going to talk a little bit about simplifying the buying process. And I want to time myself so I don't go over. And highlighting your products, getting to know your customer, and just communicating with your buyer. And so this is for you if you already have an online store, and getting more information about the technical side of your business sounds fun for you, and you enjoy learning about your customer and learning kind of about some data information that will inform your decisions. And so just some highlights. So one of the things about simplifying the buying process for your customer would include thinking about your menu and your navigation. It should be a really conventional design. So I know we like to get really creative out here. I know I do, but thinking about what is easy for when someone comes to my site, how can they receive the information I'm trying to share? And so that if, you know, where we are, we're reading from left to right here in the United States. So having our information from left to right in a horizontal banner, or if you're on a mobile phone, maybe it's on the left-hand side. Thinking about meaningful labels. I have made the mistake of being super creative with my titles of everything. But this is not the place for creativity. This is a place for if someone comes to your site and they're just looking for your ceramic wares, or maybe you're making some awesome dolls or puppets, this is where they can find their information very clearly. Another note about this is thinking about if you have a lot of different categories, thinking about listing and relisting your subcategories. So that might mean maybe I offer, I don't know, bowls, right? Maybe I have ceramic ware, right? And bowls go under one category, and maybe tableware, bowls under another category. So if you have a lot of different categories under your website, underneath your menu, it's okay to list them in more than one place. So as people are navigating and trying to find things, that they are able to find it. And being very strategic about your menu placement. And so as we think about, like, I don't know, all these different studies about memory and about what people receive and remember, if we have like a list of numbers, people remember the numbers at the beginning and the end. They remember information at the beginning and the end of a thread. And so really placing your most important information at the beginning and the end of your menu. So that might mean like, maybe there's a sale, maybe you have a promotion, something like that. But just being very strategic about the placement of your items on your menu. Another thing is to include calls to action on your website. So that's a button or link that signifies the most desired action for a site visitor. And one thing to keep in mind for that is it has imperative language. So buy now, like it's giving a direct order. It's above the fold, and it is nearby. You have information that is really important for the buyer or the customer to receive. So you might have like, oh, I'm putting buy now next to all of my information about my product. This is like the materials for my scrub. This is the weight, the ounces, and things like that. And so you're very strategic about the placement. Here are some examples of some call to action phrases that might be helpful for you. So learn more, sign up free, join now, shop now, free, save, add to cart, explore, schedule a blank, book a blank, view demo. So just like thinking about this language. I feel like I'm not inviting ease into this information. This is like so much. Take a breath. Does this feel like interesting to you? This is for you. If this like, oh, is this too much? This isn't yours. Other things to consider when we're thinking about making our process digestible and improving the likelihood that someone will purchase from our website is your shipping rate. So shipping is like either the number 1 or 2 reasons why someone may leave your website and may not make a purchase, because they get to the end, they're just like, oh, this is an extra $5. I might not want to do this. And so being very clear up front about what your shipping fees are going to be like. And so they have, you know, we have live rates. So that's like you get to the end and it's just based on whatever relationship you have with a carrier, and just being exactly what it is depending on where they are in the world and the weight and the dimensions of your item. There are flat rates. So you could say, oh, everything is $5, and there's free shipping. And of course, we're all very familiar with that because of our large online suppliers in the world. And so having like live rates, it can be like normal in certain industries. So if you have furniture, really expensive, fragile items, that we all know that the shipping is going to be very specific. Flat rates are also things that people are used to. But the most important thing is, and also with free shipping, when you're creating free shipping and you're selling something, it's important to be aware of whether you can include that fee in your profit margins or in your margin at all. And so if you have like items that are lower price, let's just say they're, I don't know, lower compared to like $100 versus $10. Let's just say you have a $10 item and including free shipping in that price, right? Maybe you increase your item to, let's say $15 because you know it just takes you $5 to ship. So that might be someone might be more price sensitive to you increasing your $10 item to $15 as opposed to all of your prices being a little bit more expensive. Maybe they're $85 and you've increased it from 85 to 90, right? So having someone just being aware of what the price of your items are and what your profit margins can be and how you change your shipping so that you are supportive of your customer's experience and also not hurting your own profit margins. Other things to consider when you are kind of taking your online store to the next level is including more information. So communicating information about your product, including an FAQ page. And so the FAQ page should be questions that people are actually asking you. And so if you're like brand new, I don't think anybody here is probably brand new if you're in Handmade Arcade, but if you're brand new, this might be coming from a survey or some type of focus group. But what are people emailing you all the time? What are people asking you as soon as they, you ever make a phone call to like a store and they just give you the information like, hi, our hours are this. We are open today, because it's like they're used to people always calling and asking, and it also saves you time and energy. And so it also is an opportunity to, it should not be a dead end. It should link to other information within your website so that they can continue shopping. So it could be like, oh, what vitamins, are your ingredients to your scrub? I just want to practice self-care right now and think about scrubs. What are your ingredients in your scrubs? Oh, we are always nut-free and we always have XYZ ingredients. Here's a link to our latest scrub, right? So allowing it to be a continuation of information and progress on your site. About 2 more minutes. And so in addition to that, thinking about writing compelling, how to highlight your products, in addition to photography, which I will not talk about today, but thinking about your compelling descriptions. And so thinking about your target audience member, your target persona, your customer persona, which we'll talk about in a second, and thinking about just writing to that one person. Like, don't think about all the person in the world. Like, who is your buyer? So creating an emotional response for that particular person, formatting it in a way so that if they were to glance over it, they would be able to find this information, include all your materials and measurements and information, knowing that if you have a lot of materials within your product description, then it will just be a little bit fuller, and that is normal and okay. And just being, again, consistent and considered about what your audience is. And the last thing to talk about is making data-driven decisions. And so going to your website, including Google Analytics, and thinking about the different information that you can gather from your website. So this is the different types of data that you can gather. Referrals, so did it come from Facebook, Instagram, and a partner? Bounce rates. Bounce rates are when they come to your website, what page do they leave on? Like, oh, everybody leaves on the FAQ page. Are they not getting their answers? Location, where are people located when they're on your website? And page views, how many people are viewing your page, and maybe they're viewing your pages at different times and different trends. In addition to that, so what information does that give you? Referrals are which channels drive new customers. Oh, so I'm getting all of my customers from Facebook. I'm getting all of my purchases from Instagram. Bounce rate, where do you lose your customers? Oh, everybody leaves on this particular item. Like, why don't they purchase it? What information is here so that I can make different decisions? Location, where is my audience? If I want to do a Facebook ad, do I want to focus it on a certain location because everybody on my website is coming from here? And page views, like, what are my seasonal trends? Or what trends exist in general that will allow me to make better decisions about how I manage my website. And the last thing is communicating. Lots of ways you can communicate, but one of those things is saying thank you to people. So thinking about the different types of audience members that you may have, long-term customers, someone who may just make one purchase. So how can we say thank you to them and identify who those particular people are? What do we do when we say thank you? Do we want to include an insert inside of our packaging? Do we want to do a customer highlight on our Instagram page? Do we want to thank them with, after they make a purchase, giving them a 30% off on their next purchase? So different ways to say thank you. And then how much will it cost? Is it free? Do I just say, hey, this is my time, which time isn't free? Or am I actually going to give them a gift, and when? So do I thank them every single time in a certain way? Or do I thank certain people on their birthday or during some seasonal time? And so that's a lot of information. Take a breath. And I invite you to notice what stood out for you just now. If something's like, ooh, that's really interesting, I want to dig a little deeper, go there. If this feels like too much, just start with one thing. That's how I'm sitting right now, relaxed. Just think about all this information. What's one thing that I can do? And start there. And just really, this is like, don't we all try to do too much. Just pick one thing. That's the best decision you can make. This is a review of some of the things that we talked about. And here are some of the websites that I featured in my entire presentation. Take a little screenshot of it, take a picture. These are all Black-owned businesses. And just another opportunity to be inspired by different ways that people offer their e-commerce websites. So thank you very much. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And again, I'm Alicia from Yoga Motive. Okay.
That's so great. That was perfect. Thank you. Such good information, and the videos that Alicia produced, recorded for us for the CBA are longer than that, and have so much more information. So I would really encourage you to check them out. And also thinking about we also have complimentary content as well, including I have some persona templates on our website that you can check out if you want to practice that a little bit, thinking about your customers and marketing. We also have an SEO webinar coming up in a few weeks. So if you're interested in the analytics, you're interested in learning more about Google Analytics, but really also the back end of your own website and how that can dovetail with understanding your customers a little bit better, that might be the thing for you. So lots of really cool things happening, and it's all related. It's everything is related. But the advice of one thing at a time is stellar advice, really good advice. It's a lot.
No problem. And I'm gonna drop a few links in here for folks just to reference.
Thank you so much. It's great. So let's go to Marlene. Marlene.
All right, hey everyone. I see a lot of familiar names on the list, so good to see that. And Alicia's presentation was actually really helpful too, because I just launched an e-commerce component of the Trellis website. So it was fun to kind of check off the things that I've done and also pick up some other tips, because e-commerce is new for legal. So that was super helpful. And I'm actually going to touch on some of the things she touched on as well, how you can use some of those tools to help with some of the legal sides of things too. So I'm going to share my screen. Cool. So I'm going to try to just hit these as much as we can. As you can imagine, legal can get pretty dense pretty quickly. So remember the deep breaths part that Alicia also mentioned, because that's always key when talking about legal things. So here you can see kind of the 5 key things I'm going to talk about. Most of these are in my What's Up with Web Sales resource, which is available on the Bridgeway Handmade Arcade website. So I recommend downloading that. And I'll also have ways you can get more Trellis resources and stuff at the end. So I'm going to kind of talk about these, and then I'll also cover, as Katie mentioned, our legal health checklist, because these are very specific to web sales. But I also highly recommend that prior to engaging in a big online e-commerce component of your business, it's important to have some of your other legal considerations generally for your business checked off and taken care of. So we'll talk about that a little bit at the end as well. And I have a whole PowerPoint video content presentation through Bridgeway, similar to like what Alicia did with Bridgeway. I did one all on that legal health checklist. So that's another resource you can go on their website and view to get an in-depth analysis of that and a copy of the checklist. Cool. terms of use and privacy policies. You probably hear about these all the time. And you keep talking like, do I really need that? Does it apply to me? What's the point? You know, it seems like expensive, or I can just download one off the internet. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what those are and if it's the right move for you, and then what are some of the other options if it doesn't seem like that's the direction you're going to go. So what terms of use are really, you know, when you have a website and people are using it, you're technically kind of in a contract with them. And so there's certain things you want to detail in that contract that you want them to know. So it kind of just, it details how your website operates, key policies, liability issues, things like that. And it can kind of be the main really long worded legal document that is then you pull out some of the key terms into a FAQ or something like that. So we'll talk about how those kind of intersect. But in the actual terms of use, you want to talk about what does your website offer? What do you have included? Any limitations on what you're offering? So, you know, if you have, you know, one of the things we often put in is if you're selling products to a consumer level, you want to put not for resale so that people can't bulk buy your products and resell them. And so you can put in your terms of use, you know, our products are not for resale. You cannot use these for wholesale purchasing without contacting us, because you might have wholesale terms, but you don't want people buying them through your website and reselling them under their own name or something like that. You know, other limitations, posting or review. So if people can post or engage on your website at all, you might want to have policies about that. Are you monitoring what people post? Do you have rules? Do you, you know, a lot of things, that's where you see language about no defamatory language, no, you know, curse words, no, you know, and you can't say mean things about each other. You can't use racially insensitive terms. Like you can't say things that you shouldn't, and we're going to monitor that. Or are you not going to monitor it and everyone's comments are their own? That's important. And there's even laws that come into play once you start looking at that. Waivers of liability. So do you have any warranties on your products? Do you have no warranties on your products? What are you liable? What are you not liable for? If you have any disclaimers, so if you're offering wellness products, you might want to have a disclaimer that you are not a doctor, that, you know, these are not considered medical products. You should seek medical advice before using them. So disclaimers like that. Cancellation terms. So usually this is more an issue when you're looking at a service or a subscription service. So how can people cancel? When does that cancellation kick in? How much notice do they have to give you? If you're looking just straight product sales, then what is your return policy? What is your refund policy? And then if you are available to ship to places in Europe, you also need to be complying with the European General Data Protection Regulation. You've probably heard the acronym GDPR. And if you are going to be targeting, or it's not even targeting, but kind of available to customers in Europe, then you generally do have to have terms of use. California also has certain privacy protection laws that you have to sometimes deal with your terms of use. I would say probably 99.9% of your businesses this won't be applicable to. Usually you have to have over 50 million in sales, or specifically selling California residents' data. I don't think most of you are doing selling of data you're collecting, but just something to flag. And then the other thing is, a lot of times I hear from people, oh, well, I use, you know, a third-party service and it comes with terms of use, and it'll show up on my website automatically. Well, those terms of use and privacy policies were written to protect that vendor. It might not have terms that are specific to protecting your business. So you want to make sure that you have your own terms and own liability, because their third-party terms will likely just be protecting them. So that's kind of terms of use. Privacy policy. So that really says what your website does, what your policies are. Think of it like a client contract, or basically you're making an individual contract with each person coming to your site. Privacy policies deal with what information you're collecting, basically what personal information you're collecting, how you're using it, what third-party services you might be using, because they might be collecting data, what services in general that you use, what platforms are you hosting on Wix, Squarespace, and what information you see. Because, for example, you're collecting payment, but you might never see a credit card, right? Usually PayPal or Stripe or so is handling all credit card information. If you have products that are targeted, now if you have a site that is targeted to kids under 13, this is, again, it's not just if you're selling kids products. People always hear this and then freak out. It's if your website is targeted to kids 13 or under. So that's the difference. If you're a website that, you know, parents are going on and buying things for your kid, that's not when the child online privacy protection rule comes in. It's when your website is targeted for kids to purchase from. But either way, even if you have an adult website, you should make it clear that your website is not targeting children. And if for some reason a kid goes on and inputs their information, they can contact you to get it back. Again, if you ship to Europe, you have to have this. And if the California laws apply, it's much more likely that it's only for many of your businesses, it would be more the Europe situation that would apply. But privacy policies is the biggest thing with the GDPR. You have to say what personal information. So are you collecting their name, their email, their phone number, their shipping address, what personal information are you collecting? How are you using it? Are you selling it to third parties? Are you just using it to, ship the product to them? What security protections do you have in place? What platforms are you hosting on? Things like that. So privacy policy can be really key. And it's also a good way to maintain that kind of customer relationship so that they know what's going on with their data. Okay, so that seems overwhelming. And I get that. That's kind of the gold standard. That's what you should be shooting for having for your website. However, I get it, not everyone's there. That's where the key terms and FAQs comes in. And Alicia did a great job setting me up for this. You want to cover some key terms, not only from a contractual and legal protection standpoint, but also from a customer service standpoint. They want to know what your shipping policies are. They want to know what your return policy is. Do you have refunds or do you just offer store credit? Maybe some of you do custom work, and if they place a custom order, is that, usually we have a no return policy on that. What happens if something arrives broken? So having key terms like that can be really important, because not only from the customer, question standpoint, like Alicia's talked about, but then you have a policy you can point to if a customer challenges you. They order something and they're like, well, this isn't exactly the color that I thought it would be. Then you can say, well, this is our return policy. We don't have returns unless it's a true defect. Color discrepancies aren't a defect. Things like that is important to have, or your FAQs, because then people can point to that. Because for example, even on my website, I have very detailed, as you can imagine, in terms of use and privacy policy, but I also have an FAQ section that quickly kind of answers the questions that people are asking. So then if they point, I have something I can easily point to, which protects your business from liability, unexpected costs, and maintains good customer relationship. So think of those questions customers commonly have, or the questions you're getting, like Alicia talked about. And these are actually, I don't know if Katie can share this, but they're also in the What's Up with Web Sales download. These are templates. So I have templates for you already made up that you just can go download. I think they're, I forget how much they are, but I think they're $75 each. And you can download them and fill them out and customize them to you and put them on your website. You can go to my e-commerce site and download them, and they're immediately download Word documents that have a detailed instruction page and then detailed comment boxes explaining each provision, how to fill it out, and different considerations for your business, as well as different options. So if you want to offer refunds, if you don't want to offer refunds. So if you don't already have these, I've already done the hard work for you. And these are what you really should have if you don't have the privacy policy in terms of use. And usually I say these are better replacement for terms of use than privacy policy. Intellectual property. This is a big one I get a lot of questions about. If you're starting to do larger scale sales, you might want to look up, and especially if you're doing a product, you might want to look at trademarking your logo, your product names, things like that, so that people can't copy them or start trying to sell a worse version of your product. And also, this is something you can deal with in the terms of use, in terms of this, everything on our site is owned by, Trellis Legal LLC. You cannot use our content without permission. You cannot download or resell. This is not for resale, things like that, so that you can protect your IP. Also, you'll probably see on most websites a bottom where it says, copyright. Put a copyright at the bottom of your business page. Even though there's our registered copyrights, which give you certain protections, stronger statutory protections, but as soon as you create content, you technically own a copyright to that. Under common law, that's enforceable. So that's where putting the symbol, showing that claim to copyright helps reinforce that. If you have any video content, include that on well. You see at the bottom of my little presentation here, I got a copyright Trellis Legal. So that's important. And like I said, in your terms of use. We also have a template for that. If you go to the Trellis template library, we have one that has basic language protection. So it's just kind of language you can stick on things that help cover intellectual property. But this is something, IP is something you should definitely talk to a lawyer about. I know Alicia's done a lot of great work on getting her IP protected and could probably tell people about that as well. It's an area of law that is really specific to your business and can be really tricky. So this is an important area to talk to. It's worth spending the money for a lawyer when it comes to IP. Disclaimers and compliance. So again, I touched on this a little bit, and Alicia actually, again, set me up great in terms of good product descriptions, putting materials, putting, where your product, what is in your product, if there's any known allergens into your product. If you have products that are under a targeted to kids under 3, you have to make sure you have choking hazard language if needed. You might want to put care instructions in your product description, because I constantly see people get, jewelry or something and it'll get tarnished. And they were like, well, how did I know I was supposed to, polish it or have to take care of it a certain way? If it's breakable materials, I know, and I have another number of clients who are glass artists or make jewelry from glass. If the material is flammable. So there's also specific consumer labeling laws. Almost every product producer in the United States has to list on their packaging or product what the product is, where it came from. So what's your business location and name, and the quantity and weight of that product. PA also, and there's other federal laws that can come in, especially if you're making products for children. That's a highly regulated area, as well as other certain consumer products. And PA has some specific consumer labeling laws as well. So these are things to be aware of. And then other disclaimers include too, again, like with wellness, speak to your doctor before using, think about what your product is. It can vary. But this is something you can talk to a lawyer about. But this is something to think about. Is there anything that if you were talking, think about it as if you were talking to your customer about, would you tell them something about this product? Because again, so much of this is not just legal, it's also customer service, right? If you will maintain better customer service if you are communicating better up front. Another big one is if you make things from found materials and you don't know 100% what those materials are, that's a good disclaimer to put on. Another big one is if you make things out of wood and it's not treated, you might want untreated wood and that there might be organisms inside and you're not liable for what might happen, because there's sometimes, wood-eating bugs that might destroy things, and mold, there's never some things you can't account for. And I know makers are so creative and sometimes use unique materials, which is awesome, but you just got to let people know that too. So those are kind of the web sales specific ones, and there's other specific considerations for each type of business, and that's something you can always reach out to me about if you're in Pennsylvania. But again, so as you can see, there's lots of legal stuff, and I know it's sometimes hard to tackle all those things. So a good backstop, if you don't have all those things tackled, is to make sure you have an entity for your business so that you have limited liability, so you're not personally liable if something does go wrong and there is a cost to that. Another key thing is that if you're doing business and you don't have an LLC or corporation and you're doing business under a name that's not your personal name, you have to register for a fictitious name, because there's laws that basically say that consumers have to be able to identify who they're doing business with. So for example, if I didn't have Trellis Legal LLC, I was just Marlene doing business as Trellis Legal, I would have to have a fictitious name registered with the state, or a DBA is something. Or if you're doing business under a name that's different from your LLC registration, that's another situation in which you need a DBA. Having the proper formational documents to prove you're running your business separately. Talking to an accountant. I can't tell you how important this is. You should have a lawyer, you should have an accountant. At least ones you can call and ask questions to. And most of us will offer free initial consultations. And it's really important, especially as you get into sales, like, is your business subject to sales tax? Do you need to be collecting that? What tax registrations do you have? What if you're doing interstate sales? How do you account for that? Keeping your business money separate from your personal money. Insurance, because even if you have a limited liability company or a corporation, you want to have good insurance because that's your first line of defense, because you still don't want to lose all your business assets, even if your personal assets are protected. Using contracts, and when you're doing web sales, contracts are those terms of use and privacy policy and terms. Intellectual property considerations, employee considerations. Is someone who's working with you truly an independent contractor, employee? We could do a whole lesson on that. And specific considerations for your business. So many times as makers, I'm helping them think through specific considerations for their business. Okay, that was a lot. But don't worry, I have lots of resources and templates for you. I'm happy to talk to you. You can reach out. Also, as you can see, many other makers and service providers have knowledge in these areas too and can help point you to resources. I always say the best resource is other business owners in your industry, because they've probably been through it too, and they can tell you their war stories to help prevent yours. And it seems like a lot, but here's also some key reasons why all this is so important. It's good for your long-term business health. It's good for compliance reasons, liability protection, protecting what you've worked so hard to create. And again, good customer services and clear policies means that your business will do better in the long run. And here's just, you guys got this. There's some time before the holidays. You're like Bridgeway and Handmade Arcade are doing a great job getting you guys resources. You can go to my website. You can sign up for my free legal resources. I put one out every single month. It goes straight to your mailbox, your email box, and has clickable links and links to blog posts and other downloads completely for free. And the checklist, the legal health checklist and the What's Up with Web Sales are on the Handmade Arcade CBA site. So you can download those. They're Word documents. And they also have links to our applicable templates. And then as Katie mentioned, and I talked about, the template library, which is an e-commerce site that you can download legal templates that have detailed explanations. And I even offer a discount if you want me to take a look at them after you, work on your template, so that you can do that. And I have my contact information here as well. Hope that was helpful. And I'm gonna take a break.
That was awesome. Yeah, that was really, really good. Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's just like every time you give a presentation, it's always so interesting and so thorough. And I like learn something new every time. It's great. And another reason to also spend the time and chip away at these things, it doesn't have to happen all at once, is an observation I had in my work at Bridgeway, was that when the PA small business grants happened and some other COVID related opportunities were on the table for businesses, some people weren't able to jump at those opportunities because they didn't have their ducks in a row. And it was really hard to see that. And that was like having an entity. There actually legally wasn't a business. There wasn't a separate bank account. There wasn't an entity. People weren't filing their taxes because they felt like they weren't making enough to justify it. So actually on paper, a business actually didn't really exist. But there was a business, right? There's an Instagram account, there's sales that are happening, and that disconnect was, I think, really eye-opening for some makers, especially newer makers, who kind of think, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Next year I'll get a separate bank account or whatever. So just throwing that out there, that there are very tangible reasons to make these moves, and you don't want to hold yourself back in the end.
And it's really pretty affordable too. Most of the times having an LLC is, you get taxed the same as a sole proprietorship. There's only mostly benefits. There's no annual fee with Pennsylvania or things like that. So it's a pretty low cost way to protect yourself and get yourself legit to apply for grants and things like that. Yeah. So
I totally agree. Okay, that's great. So much great information. Okay, last but definitely not least, I'm going to hand the mic over to Porter Loves.
Okay.
Hey everyone.
Oh God, I don't know how to do this. Play from start. Cool. Yeah. Hi, people.
So this is the cover of the PDF resource that we created for the CBA and Handmade Arcade, because and basically the prompt here is and it's always the case that people are like, oh, your photos are so great, but I can't afford you. And we do everything we can to be affordable to artists. That's where we are in our mission. We're very much focused on being accessible to artists and not trying to just ratchet up our own personal bank accounts. But we totally get when you're just starting out and you're like, I'm selling these necklaces for $20. How can I spend $300 to take photos of them? So we honestly, I mean, we told Katie when we were developing some of this stuff that we have photos going back in our archives, which Nathan is very upset that some of them are still on the internet, where we used, a set of sheets that we got at Target as a backdrop, and like work lights from Home Depot and other things. So you got to get it done. You got to make it work.
Just make it work.
Yes, Nate really loves Tim Gunn. So it's always, it's the make it work moment. So we're just, I mean, we're the PDF is really where some of the goods are, but we'll just kind of go through. This is a quick little brief intro to us. And obviously those of you who are here early got to see the doggies on screen. We've relegated them to outside so that we can actually get through our presentation now. But so you can see they're a very big part of who we are, and the sort of authenticity in our brand, and moving on. So there's a fairly famous glass artist out of Los Angeles named Joe Cariotti, who makes these incredibly gorgeous and precise design bottles. And he gave a lecture when he was here at the Glass Center probably 8 or 9 years, a long time ago. And in one of in the course of his lecture, he said the work isn't done until it's photographed. And we weren't even like anywhere near where we are in our business now, but I think both of us were like, oh my God, yes.
He's conceptualizing his whole process to, that he's thinking of the end point as being beyond actually making the work, because then he's thinking we have to sell it, and until it's on a website sold out the door
in a gallery,
it might as well not exist.
Right. And I think one of the reasons why we particularly grasped this concept a lot is because what we also encounter is that artists and makers make a lot of stuff, and then they don't think about that finishing process until the deadline comes up and it's 24 hours from now, and and so it's getting better now because we've been like drilling it into some of our best friend clients for a long time, but a lot of times it was, hey, can I have a shoot tomorrow, and can you turn the photos back around to me like that same day? And it was like, no, like that's not how life works. And so one of our big things is that we want to encourage everyone to include thinking about, what Alicia and Marlene were saying about, product descriptions and all that stuff, like figure out all that stuff as part of the process of creating, and additionally the photographs, so that when someone says like, hey, I'm doing this virtual market and I need you to load up a bunch of your items on here, you're just like, yeah, I have all of that lined up, ready to go. I've got photos, I've got descriptions. And so that it's not that, oh crap moment, and not being able to take advantage of opportunities that come your way, like these grant opportunities that we were talking about.
Exactly.
As we're big fans of outsourcing to pros, not just because we want you to hire us. I always want to be clear about that. It's not about like saying, of course we want you to outsource to pros, because we outsource to pros too. I tried doing our own taxes a few years ago, like several years ago now. And like 1 year it worked. And then the next year I spent 8 hours on customer service with TurboTax, on the phone with TurboTax customer service. And like, it was a total nightmare. And I was just like, I'm never going to do this again. It's not worth my time. Yeah. And so again, sort of going back to what Alicia said about those things that excite you, that feel good, versus the things that are like, ew, no, I hate that. You know, find
Yeah.
ways to lean into the things that are joyful and excite you and interest you.
And then do like put all the stuff that you're not interested in doing to the professionals who do that all the time.
Right. And think
then-
about when you're worried about how much something costs. This is one of the things that I always try to tell people. When you're worried about like, oh, but it's $300 or $500 for this help or this thing, and you think about like, but what are you trading for that money? Because it's not just the photos or the legal help. It's how much time would you spend
Making your work.
stressing? Yeah, like what can you do that's more productive for you or enjoyable for you with the time that you would otherwise be spending like banging your head against the wall, trying to force yourself to do that thing because you think that your time is free, which it's not. So that, again, just reinforcing what our earlier panelists have said. We know it's not always possible to hire pros. That's why we're here tonight, and that's why we created this resource, but it doesn't diminish the importance of documenting your photos. You can't, it's not okay to say like, well, I can't hire Porter Loves, that means I can't have photos of my stuff. No, you need photos.
Get
You need,
something.
especially now when we're not having the Handmade Arcade where 10,000 people are going to come to the convention center and see your stuff in person. Your photos are that much more important. They were super important before, but now with COVID and the increasingly digital world, your photos have to rock and they have to answer the questions for your consumer about like, what does this thing look like? What does it do? What will it do for me? What does it look like if I turn it this way? How long is it? And so, the main sort of framework for the strategy document that we created is the idea that like, we know that the same way that you can't necessarily afford to hire a pro is that you also can't necessarily afford to hire or to buy the best camera, the best tripod, the best, you know, have a paper suite behind you when you're on Zoom meetings. And you don't let the fact that you can't get the perfect best thing stop you from doing the thing at all.
Yeah.
So
especially if you have work that you kind of have around and, you know, it's not really doing anything for you sitting in boxes. And, you know, if you get it, you know, at least a semi-decent photo on the web, you have the chance of, you know, marketing it to a wider audience, making some money, and then affording a better photo later, and then even a better photo later.
Exactly.
You know, it's an evolving thing.
Yeah. And we're also big on the like pick one thing. So, you know, yeah, it's like try to get like don't try to do all the things at once. I mean, when you can't afford to spend like $300 to hire a photographer, you also can't afford $2,500 for like the most amazing camera. So we basically broke down in the book, we talk about camera, background, lighting, and editing, and then like a few other things that didn't really fit into one of those main categories we talk about. And we talk about it in the framework of good, better, and best. So we basically say to you, this is a good option, this is a better option, and this is the best option. And what may be surprising to most people who get, I think, a little paralyzed by the idea that like it takes so much to get decent photos is that in every single case, the good option is something that you probably already have in your house, or at least could borrow from a neighbor or something. Like it's cheap, you know,
Yeah,
like, I
yeah.
mean, I said at one point in the book, like, yes, I know that even in 2020, there are people who don't have an iPhone or a phone with a camera on it. Like they still make them, which is sort of like this strange parallel universe that we're in. But if you don't actually have a camera or a tablet or something or a phone or a tablet that has a camera on it, you know someone that does, that will like lend it to you. So we break that down. And then the final thing that we kind of wanted to say is that, you know, we also know it's like sometimes you go through these DIY resources and you're like, wow, this is great, but it's still not working for me. It's, you know, I need more help. And one of the things that we do a couple times a year is we partner with the Glass Center. We did something with the CBA late this summer where we set up basically in 25-minute sessions, and you can bring, but it depends on what you're bringing in the specifics, but usually it's about 3 to 7 pieces that can be shot within a 25-minute session, or
wow,
12.
yeah.
And we have one of them coming up on November 20th, which is definitely a tight timeline for the Handmade Arcade thing. And we usually have a 3-week turnaround time on our photos, but I think that we would be willing to, you know, crack the whip on ourselves to make things
I
go.
have to interrupt here and let everyone know that you can't wait until November 20th. Your images are going to have to be uploaded way sooner than that. And I
Okay.
was hoping that you guys could give some tips on how to do some stuff at home, perhaps, maybe for folks. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely
thank
some
you.
stuff in the PDF.
The
for that,
PDF
yeah.
resource is all about how to do stuff from home.
Yeah.
So then never mind the November 20th for Handmade
Well-
Arcade, but generally
But that's for the
speaking,
next
you know, for
opportunity.
the next opportunity for, you know, like, obviously we're all here and interested in this Handmade Arcade opportunity, but we also want all of you to be successful in the next season and beyond.
Yep.
So this is an opportunity that was scheduled before the pandemic, and it's going to continue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's it. We don't have any more slides.
That's awesome. Thank you. And yeah, and I think that also the Handmade Arcade, besides that, just having some great photography for your e-commerce site for the holidays too is going to be really good. So, but yeah, Trisha's point is spot on about the actual uploading onto the platform that's been developed. That's happening beforehand. That and the PDF that Sam and Nathan put together is just excellent. And I actually appreciate that you guys didn't go too deep into it, because it would be like this rabbit hole of, you know, and we want to leave some time for some questions, but it is such
Honestly, yeah, the photography thing is a huge rabbit hole, and there's lots of bewildering paths to go down. So we tried to make it as approachable so that if you have zero experience, or if you've minored in photography, you know, whatever, that you can kind of find the point at which you can kind of improve what you're putting out there in the world. And then if you're able to take it to the next step, you can, or, you know, or not. It's really kind of like meant for people to take at their own speed and at their own, you know, skill level.
Yeah, I think that it's great. I'm going, I see a question. Yeah, and I was going to say, I really encourage people to ask questions in the Q&A. And if we end up going a little over, just a tad to answer them, that's fine. I also have questions queued up as well. So I said, is Laverne, I already signed up with Porter. When will the photos be due for our page? Trisha, can you speak to when the upload happens?
Yeah, so we should have the deadline for the image box who's creating the website. The goal is to have it ready by November 7th, and then on November 12th is the how to populate your Handmade Arcade page. And we really want to have everyone get their images uploaded no later than November 15th, because there's a lot of testing, and this hopefully won't get pushed back. Hopefully we won't hit any bumps in the road with the programming. But there's going to be there's 130 plus makers. We don't know what's going to happen with the database when all these images and videos get put in there. So we really are hoping to push to get everybody uploaded and done by November 15th. So we have a padded time to test. And also, because I'm well aware of my beloved maker community, when I say, please get it up to by November 15th, half of you will. And then on November 16th, 17th, and 18th, I'll be calling, texting, and emailing the other half. So while I know who you are. So I have a memory for such things. So that's why, and that's a great opportunity, though. I still think you ought to go and sign up for the November 20th, but it just might not work. And there's also the chance that you might be able to log into the website and switch an image. Like, for example, if you upload an image and you sell out of that particular one, like there is a chance that you might be able to log in while the marketplace is going on to swap an image out in that instance. but because it's so new and it's a pilot, I'm hesitant to like encourage that without a lot of testing, which is why we need that lead time. So
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a really good, really good question. Okay, and so there's a Sam, there's a question in the chat that's specifically about your website. I don't know if you see it or not, but I'm going to actually ask a question for the panelists. Use a little bit of time. One of the things, so when I was watching the e-commerce 102 website video that just came out, that was recorded really recently. You, Alicia, you talk about cart abandonment and you go pretty like deep into that, which is really, really great. And I noticed that that topic is this really interesting intersection of there's like of sort of customer psychology and then also some of the legal stuff. Like one of the reasons that cart abandonment happens is because of shipping and people getting to the end and not understanding the cost around that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. And also it kind of got me thinking about people maybe not understanding the product super well and not feeling, there's something about a lack of confidence sort of in purchasing. And so how can the product description and clearly understanding the shipping and the photography describing the product really well so that when you get somebody to the end that they don't sit in that abandoned cart?
Great question. So I was just looking to see if I had that slide available because it was really, really helpful. But I'm sorry, I'm like a little distracted. I'm trying to bring this up for you. There it is. That's not it, just plain. So when you think about cart abandonment, people basically go through the process. They put something in their cart. What is it? They put something in their cart in some way through the checkout process. They don't actually complete their purchase. And so there are lots of different reasons why. One could be the checkout process is not, it's too complicated and people don't feel, they feel confused along the way. Another thing is additional fees. So some of those additional fees might be taxes, some of those additional fees might be shipping, and then also maybe they're not clear about the return policy and things like that. And so I think it's really helpful for one to include cart abandonment software in your website, and a lot of like Squarespace, Shopify, BigCommerce, a lot of people offer it as an add-on, as a box you can check. Usually it's for an additional at a certain level as far as the type of plan that you have, but just taking a moment to create to include cart abandonment software so that when someone leaves throughout the checkout process, that they can automatically receive an email. Another thing is collecting someone's email earlier in the checkout process so that you can send that information. And yes, and Wix has it, and yep. And most e-commerce sites, they do have it. And so collecting someone's email information earlier in your checkout process so that you can, send them an email. Another thing is customizing your cart abandonment email. So it's not just like, hello, I am a bot, come back. Like, what is your brand? What is that personality that you can include in that cart abandonment software? And then there was another thing. Another reason why people leave is because they have to create an account. There's like what I was trying to look for, which I can't find in a second, was people don't want to create a whole account when they come to your website. They want to be able to, so that's kind of like, that is very different from what I said earlier, like collect their email early, but don't create an account. But those are two things, right? But if they have to get to the point where they have to create this long, like, hello, I'm joining your whole community, people go like, oh, I don't want to do that. And so, and also when you're saying like, yes, exactly what you're mentioning, being very clear about your product, about what it is, so that you are building confidence with your customer along the way, so that you're not throwing any wrenches in your communication stream during your checkout experience, so that they follow through. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that that's a great answer to it. And I don't know about how everybody shops differently, but I know that for myself as a consumer, I tend to put things into a cart and then walk away and think about it and then go back. And like, especially with larger purchases, or multiple purchases that's like turned into a large purchase, I will like, I actually literally have that happening right now on one of my computers. There's like a tab open and I'm like, will I or won't I? And part of that I've realized after like being in this space that I'm in is I'm like, okay, so what pushes me over? And I think it's, I go back and I look at the products again. And that's when I start thinking about the photography. Like, how can I see myself using this thing? How descriptive is the photography? And I thought also, this got me thinking about Sam and Nathan, like, is it depending on your brand, like, should you have style photography in your product description so that you can project your, like, so I can see the bowl on a table or in a hand at least? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I think we're muted.
No, I just unmuted.
Oh, sorry. I'll say that styled photography can definitely be done. I think that you have to take some care in conceptualizing what situation you want to portray your item in, so that it is logical for its intended use and your intended client also. But it's also good to recognize that less is more in that, and that you still want your, whether it's your bath soap or your necklaces or whatever your item is, you want that to be the first thing that somebody sees. Oh, and then, this nice cutting board can also be used, in this situation, or, so that the styling doesn't become the main focus, that the styling is just there as a support. Is also the reason that we emphasize simple backgrounds, because a background is something that you shouldn't even see, you shouldn't even notice if it's performing its function properly. And I think the styling is similar in that way, that
Yeah, I think
it helps. It doesn't do it all.
Yeah, it doesn't take the place of a clean, clear product shot, but it can support that product shot. So
I think in our slides we have one shot that's white with the drink,
the pomegranate and the drink in the glass, and that's like, it's a very simple version of styling, but it helps you understand, like, oh, this glass is clear, and the the pomegranate is like a size that people sort of understand, so they, oh, that glass is like this. And we've also, with that same artist, taken shots where like her hand is holding the glass, so you can see sort of that scale. And so something that we say in the ebook on this topic is just the ebook, you know what I mean, PDF resource. With the whole time that we've been doing this, I've been calling it like 8 different things. So a zine, I'm just like, I can't, so I'm like, I haven't landed on anything. But what we basically say is that whenever you're thinking like, I think I should do photos of my thing with X or out in the woods or whatever, like, ask yourself why. Like, what question is that photo answering about your product? Because if like, I just think it looks cool, or I just really like driftwood. Driftwood is one of those like big trendy things that everybody want to put their stuff on driftwood. And if like that doesn't make sense for your product, it just looks weird and like you're trying to be trendy. So we're big fans of like using styling to support your overall goals. And so, yeah, when you're talking about a bowl, like, how many pieces of fruit can fit in this bowl, and what would it look like on a nice table? Like, we see that a lot with tableware, but there's no point in putting your earrings on the side of a teacup.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that the earrings on the side of a teacup really like brings to mind some like I'm on Etsy right now, and I'm looking at like some chinaware with like some dangly things. Yeah, I can really see that.
I think it's also important when you're taking the pictures, just from somebody who organizes events standpoint, that background stuff is going to distract us, like the jurors. So when you're applying to events that you're being juried into, it's really important that you make sure we understand what your product is by your picture, and not have like a bunch of flowers like in the background of things. That doesn't make that, we get that a lot for some reason. It doesn't, and you can actually like in one fell swoop with too much stuff and not enough product, knock yourself out of the running. Because if a juror is like, I don't understand what this picture is, and they swipe, they're not going to swipe back. So it's super important to be careful and mindful about those things.
I have something to add, just kind of touching on this, but also adjacent to it. I talked about protecting your intellectual property. Make sure you're also not infringing on anybody else's.
Sure.
So make sure that if you aren't using any of your own photos, if you have images anywhere on your website, that you have the right to use those images. They either came from Unsplash or another source that's open to common usage, or if you have background things in your pictures that they don't have logos or images on them because you are using these for commercial purpose. I know sometimes people think, oh, on my social media or on my website, like, I'm not actually getting money for using those images. It's not commercial. Nope. If it's related to your business, if you're posting it on a business site, social media, anything, it's copyright infringement. And don't think just because you're small, it can't happen. I had a small salon client who, like, her admin downloaded like some picture off the internet, and they posted a pride image, so it wasn't even for like a service of theirs. And there's literally, and I'm sorry that they give lawyers a bad name, but there's like troll firms that just have algorithms searching for this, and then they send demand letters to people, and they will follow up with suits. So it can get pretty gross pretty quickly and pretty expensive. So just a big thing with images, products, anything like that, making sure that if you're using anything that you didn't create, you make sure you have the proper license to use it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it. I hear all the time, I found this image on Google. Can I put it? I'm like, no, don't you dare.
Guys, Unsplash is your best friend.
Yeah. That's a whole other webinar probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often tell clients when they do have questions about the usage rights, especially if they're, coming from me, so I can control, the whole conversation there, that we're very generous in the usage terms, because we are specifically, working with clients that might not know exactly what they want to use it for. And I mean, Marlene, as a lawyer, I'm sure you can specify all sorts of different things in a contract. We try to make it as simple as possible, but we're very, upfront with people that, we retain copyright to the photos, but we grant a license that, in usual circumstances is very broad, so that we don't want to hamstring our clients from doing what they can with the photos. But your point is so solid. Like, make sure you're using photos you have rights to. Right. And if they're from us, just let me know, and we can explain it in very, basic detail, what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Yeah, those are all really, really good points. I think it's true. And I think about Instagram sometimes with that as well. I think people try to be good about tagging people and showing reposts, but I would also just be careful in that realm. It's not even just your website, but it's really just presenting the images as your own in any of those capacities. We're going to run out of time really quickly, but there's at least one other topic that I think is a burning issue that I'm really curious about. Alicia, you brought this up, actually, the shipping piece. And right now, that is such an issue. And actually, the Handmade Arcade just hosted last week, I believe it was, the whole webinar really talking about shipping with COVID, especially because the way that our mail system has been overwhelmed and has had a lot of issues. And also just thinking about that checkout process, going back to it, the cart abandonment, and also where are the policies, and especially with COVID, should we, and maybe this is one for Marlene, should we have specific terms or language at that checkout that is also like acknowledges COVID, acknowledges that your package could get lost and that it might not show up on time, just trying to like head off these possible issues rather than sort of bury it in the FAQ or terms or something?
Yeah, I think, that's something that's so important in terms of like terms of use. I mean, I talk about how important they are to have. I freaking know no one reads them. I don't read them most of the time. It's more just so that you have something you point to, so you can, you can say you agreed to this. But it is important to have those key terms and the FAQs and key terms that are really easy to find on your website. And another great way is, I know Wix and others have a little banner you can put on top of your website. I've seen this on some e-commerce websites, or you can put a note at checkout. I don't think you should be super specific, because I always say, you know, you are responsible for what you say, not only from a legal standpoint, which is true, but also from, again, getting back to that customer service component. So what I'm kind of encouraging a lot of my clients to do is just say COVID-19 has affected shipping. We try to get things out to you within 1 to 2 weeks, but please excuse any delays due to COVID shipping impacts or supply chain impacts. So that, and usually in your key terms, I do recommend saying, like, and you'll see this a lot on other e-commerce websites, like we put things in the mail, you know, within 2 or 3 days of your order. Things typically get to you between, you know, 10 and 14 days or 5 and 7 days. So putting ranges like that and communicating like that is good. And then you can put that kind of COVID disclaimer on it. Again, it just goes back to more communication and clear understanding. I'm never, and I have this from ordering things online. If I see that notice, I'm like, okay, I won't expect it for 2 or 3 weeks. But if I order something and I don't see that, then I'm a little like, what the heck? So, and then it gives you protections if someone say, well, I ordered this for an event, it didn't show up, I want my money back. You know, so they might, which is happening less and less in terms of we aren't having events, but sometimes people have specific, right, or this first person's birthday and it didn't come in time. So that's kind of stuff where you can put it in the checkout notes or have a little box that pops up, or it says it in the email when they order. I usually say it's better to do it before they order, because there's technically accepting that as a term of their order. Because remember, you're creating a contract. You know, there's an offer of your product for a set price with set terms, and they're accepting it by buying that. So putting that clearly on your website, I think, is helpful. I think it's a good idea, even if shipping is fine, to just put it on there just in case, because we just don't know with COVID when, if we get another spike, will supply chains really shut down again? And another thing too is to be cautious of when you have products posted, your inventory, and making sure you're updating your site if you're out of stock or something, and put, you know, we can't get these materials right now. It'll be a while until they're back in stock. Again, just communicating those things to your customers, because everyone kind of understands what's going on with COVID, but the more information, as long as it's not too specific, the better.
Those are great points. And the inventory side is something that Trisha and I know we've talked about, and we have some tools, digital tools, to think through that, because I think a lot of makers don't really keep, I've noticed, don't really keep accurate inventory on the back end, and can oversell or get into situations. And that can get pretty confusing. And then also, I think this is tied with like the photography piece too. Also, people are updating their websites, switching products out if you run out of a line, or thinking ahead about the photography when your inventory runs out and you need to switch it out. I think that's probably some of the panicked phone calls and emails that Sam and Nathan get, are like, oh my God, you know, I need to launch this, or I'm out of this and I don't have any images. Yeah. Trisha, do you have any thoughts to add, just because you have actually facilitated so many webinars recently on these topics? Like your mind is probably swimming.
Well, I think that a couple of things that came to mind when you were talking. Number one, I think everyone should know that Doris is closing officially. So if I know a maker that I know well gets a lot of his supplies from there, and he messaged me the other day and he's like, oh crap, this is closing. And there's some specific products that he gets from there he doesn't know. So don't wait. Like, this is the most important thing. Like, while I love the advice, like, one thing at a time, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to embroider it into a hoop and hang it, because I need to remind myself of that. Make a list and check those things off one at a time, because the supply chain situation, it's real. And if you wait too long, this happens a lot with with our Youth Maker program. Youth makers know that in August that they have X amount of money to spend and they should order. And then last year we had a couple makers ordering stuff like the week before. And I'm like, you guys, like, I can't get this gray over the Youth Maker program. So don't wait. when it comes to shipping, one of the things we talked about last week that was really important, I think, was get your shipping supplies now, because that can also be a supply chain issue. So like if you know you need padded envelopes, or you know you need, bubble wrap or whatever, you need it, get it now. If you want to order in bulk and you don't have the money for it, or you don't have the space for it, get on the Handmade Arcade private Facebook group for the makers, see if somebody wants to split it with you. And, with the picture situation, like I really think that, like, don't wait until you have everything made. Like if you're going to make a pair of earrings that you're going to make 10 of the same pair of earrings, make the first pair, get a really good picture, then make the rest. Like don't wait until you've got your inventory 100% ready to go to start prepping pictures and prepping message and prepping material lists of what goes into it. Kind of like, as you go, chunk it up and take a day, like, have a day for making, have a day for organizing, have a day for picture taking, or set your calendar up. We shared a calendar, like an empty template calendar in the prepping your inventory seminar we did, the very first one. So go back to the Handmade Arcade website or to the Creative Business Accelerator and like watch that prepping your inventory, because we talked about like breaking it up in a way so you don't get burnt out and you still are able to manage it. And then stay on it that week, like make sure that if you see something sells out and you can swap a picture, I'm hoping we'll be able to allow you to do that, then do it. And then there was one other thing I wanted to say that I wrote down. But
Let me just jump in while you're looking for that.
Sure.
When you were talking about sort of setting a schedule and not waiting until everything's 100% done, one of the things that I wanted to say, which I know may not be 100% helpful for this timeline, but just in general, thinking about that being prepared and thinking ahead thing. We do have clients that book like they'll set up like a bi-monthly photo session with us for the next 6 months. And they said to us, like, it just helps me know that like I'm having photos taken on this day. And so we have some clients that they have a photo session in November, they have a photo session in February and April. And so that also helps them keep their production schedule and what they're creating in line when they know, like, well, I'm going to see Nate on that day and I got to have my stuff ready. So it's a helpful thing. If when you're talking about calendars, you can create something similar like that for all the components of your business, like sort of a regular check-in on inventory and whatnot.
It feels, at least from my perspective, I think that the clients who want to do the recurring sessions, it feels less stressful for them to not have to sort of squeeze in items last minute. They know that there's going to be another session for photography. So like concentrate on what, kind of bite off what you can chew now, chew it up well, move on to something else.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that one of the things I tell makers all the time leading up to the event is don't burn out. Like if you're staying up all night making something and you're not getting sleep and you're not doing the self-care that Alicia would recommend that you do, you are going to make a crappy product. It's not going to be as good as the one that you make the next morning after a good night's sleep. Absolutely. Or, a restful hour of yoga or a really healthy meal. Like you're going to make a better product if you're doing better self-care. And I think that that's super important. Don't overdo it. Set a goal. Like say, I want to make this much money or I want to sell this much product, and get that many pieces made and then take a breath and get their pictures taken. I know the one other thing I wanted to say was last week, Lucy spoke about shipping dates and having like final dates for the holidays. And she has that clearly marked on her website, and it goes off of the UPS. And we also talked about like, doing the COVID disclaimer, but if you want to, what just happened? Oh my goodness.
Like the lights went out at your place.
Yeah, something just wanted to update on my computer, some Java thing. It's never done that before. Anyway, just like set, like, this is, if you want this by Christmas or by, a certain day or by, that by, whatever, you just say like, it has to be ordered and by like December 7th so that you can get to the post office. So you can put that kind of language on your website to like a final guaranteed date, and hope it all works.
That reminds me of thinking about capacity and self-care and schedules and dates. Something that I've seen other makers do and have actually counseled one or two people is to shut down your website if you need to. Do it thoughtfully and communicate. But if you run out of inventory, or something happens, like which a maker that happened recently, and like couldn't, like when I went to their website, everything was just sold out. It wasn't like a great look. It kind of made me feel like worried about her, you know, and I couldn't like tell what was going on. And so when I spoke to her and I found out that she was just really behind and had like life stuff come up, I was like, well, then maybe you can reframe it and say, hey, we're relaunching in early November, and we're excited to show you new products. So to learn more, let's get your email, and like, you know, there'll be like a sale when that first happens. Like reframe it as like an exciting thing and like have a build to that. It doesn't have to be scary or sad. And but at the end of the day, it's, you know, being in your body and taking care of it and being resilient will enable you to make great products and have really authentic and pleasant interactions with customers, and really just help you be the best entrepreneur that you can be. Tired, exhausted, frazzled people with a very short fuse don't really, it doesn't, people can feel that, you know, it's not great.
I want to just tag onto that, Katie, that if you run out and you have to shut your website down during the middle of the virtual marketplace, that's awesome. Like, I don't want you to feel like, oh my God, they're never going to let me in again. This is awful. No, like, running out of inventory and having a plan and having a goal and getting to that and making to it and making the money and being so popular on the virtual marketplace the first time we ever do it that you sell out, like, email me and tell me these are stories I want to hear. Like, I want to know about your success. So like, to me, that isn't like in any way, shape, or form like a check mark against you or anything. That is a like, you did it, like, yay, you did it moment. So like, I really, really mean that. And like, I'm, you know, like, and I also, like, I really think that like, that's something that, like, I know that makers might worry, like, oh no, I'm out of inventory, they're going to get mad. Like, we will never like hold any, that's like a celebration for us, in our opinion. We did our job, you did yours.
That's lovely. I think a lot of people would need to hear that, and I'm really glad that you said that.
I'm all, you know, I have a short fuse, but I'm also one of the most laid back people you'll meet. It's like a weird dichotomy. It's hard to light the fuse, but when you light it.
Watch out.
Well, I want to thank you all. It's 7:38. I mean, this is fantastic. I just looked at the PDF. I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. That the Porter Loves put together, and it's amazing. And
Yeah.
It's not going to be available forever. So just make sure you get on there and download that stuff. It will be added to the Handmade Arcade website tomorrow. It's already on the Creative Business Accelerators website. Thank you guys all so much for your expertise and for your time and for caring about this endeavor. And we really appreciate it very, very much. And I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. So good luck. Continue making, ask questions in the Facebook group, send me emails if you need to. And I'm really looking forward to, you know, getting this all done and seeing how it goes. So thank you all so much. Have a good evening.
Yay, thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you. This
Have
has
a
been
good night.
wonderful. Good night, everybody.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.